Welcome to the podcast. So glad you're here. If you love this episode or any episodes, please give it a 5-star review at Apple or Google, wherever you listen. Today, we're talking about implementing your family culture. This has been so fun. Love your feedback too. Let's dive in. Hey, the reason paying attention to your family culture is so important is that it influences the behaviors and attitudes in your family way into the future. It guides the trajectory of character development, choices, spiritual growth, and behaviors. In a positive, motivating way, your culture can put guardrails on choices and behavior your children make today, but way down the road as well. But not because they have to, because they want to, even when no one's watching them. You get to ingrain in them how to navigate this world as a believer through consistently moving forward a culture that positively influences your family. But it takes some thoughtfulness to identify the improvements you want to influence. As a reminder from last week's podcast, culture are the real attitudes and behaviors of your family when no one is looking. It's not the highlights. It's the deep reality and unwritten norms your people hold to. Therefore, it usually isn't what we say our family is. It's what it actually is. The ones who take this seriously, by the way, are the ones who realize their words have the potential for huge impact on the trajectory of their families. After you identify the areas you want your culture to influence, you create culture-driving statements that you are going to communicate. After this episode, go back to episode 5 if you haven't had it yet, Crafting Your Family Culture Plan. That gives you the precise strategy in doing this. Okay, a quick story. There was a time in my past where I built an organization with offices across 2 states that was doing millions in revenue. And part of our surge past what to this day has even ever been done before was crafting a culture plan and implementing it relentlessly. It had 7 culture driving statements and what I call a crucible statement that I used to influence all of the behavioral areas that prior were limiting greater success for everyone. Without going into all of it here, the crucible statement was simple: choose growth. At first, prior to launching it, the more I said it, the more I doubted it. I then asked one of my leaders what he thought, and there was no big enthusiasm for it and nothing negative either. I then realized something profound that was holding me back. I got to share with you. Most leaders are held back by this. If positive feedback from others is required in order to stay the course with your culture influencing statements, you'll never stay the course. And consistently communicating your culture driving statements is essential for large positive impact on your business or family. See, most areas feedback is good, but this isn't one of those areas other than your wife, of course, but we have to decide and do this. My conviction and words consistently communicated brought the unique meaning to choose growth that daily upgraded everyone's attitudes, choices, and behaviors across 2 states. The great sports teams do this. Enduring companies do this as well. To you, your family is the most important team in the world, right? And you're the leader of your family. So you get to do this with your wife in alignment as a leadership team, influencing your family forward to be strong in greater unprecedented times. So now that you have your culture driving statements written out that positively influence the right change, the question is, how do you implement this so it actually makes an indelible difference on your family? My first thing is to initiate a marriage meeting. Let's face it, our wives are likely spending more quantity time with our children than we are, and we want them to have massive influence on our children, and we want to help them do that. You've got to be in alignment with your spouse, and I found the more I involve my wife in the process, the more into it she is. That's a human thing, right? So bring her into the process wherever that works for your marriage and lead this process with her. You know, people always ask, what does spiritual leadership look like? This kind of thing is a huge part of it right here. Now, an aligned marriage team who loves and honors each other is one of the greatest gifts you can ever give your children. So next, arrange a family meeting. Perhaps have a whiteboard out that you can write on, come prepared, sharing some vision for the family in the beginning, and then introduce one culture driving statement at a time. Write it on the whiteboard, share why this is an important focus, promise them too that they will hear you talking about this ongoing, and tell them the whys behind it. Here's an example of me communicating a culture driving statement in past with my family. Okay, here we go. An important focus for our family is that we're going to increasingly move towards becoming producers versus consumers. We're living in an age where technology has made access to information and entertainment seamless and always available. While that's helpful and can be good, too much can become harmful. In fact, it's really an epidemic that is robbing young people from using their minds, being creative, and contributing to society. It's leading to depression and entitlement. Most people watch other people live their dreams at the sacrifice of living their own. We aren't going to be most people. We are Tulpans, and we're going to contribute to the betterment of humanity in the directions God calls us to. Now, as you get older, there are increasing opportunities for consumption. It's those who are disciplined about this that don't lose their own gifts to contribute, but instead discover and strengthen them. I want you to discover and strengthen your gifts. So when you hear producers versus consumers, it's not that we don't consume. We're going to make sure we don't overconsume so that we work the muscle of producing too. Meaning we're creating value that helps others, whether that's your purses you make and sell, the poems you write, the music you play, the things we build, the things we produce and grow, the books you write, the art you paint, the podcasts we produce, and the media we create. God has unique plans for each of your lives and has given you unique gifts too. And while you're at home, we want you to start discovering these things. Okay, so there is an example of what I've done in past, right? Kind of interesting probably to hear that. Of course, my tone and pace was probably a little slower in front of my children. But one of the things I deeply understand is people take action based on a problem they don't want to experience and or a vision for what they want. So you want to get good at communicating both when you're influencing something forward. In this case, if you notice, as we look back, I shared both the problem they don't want, which is becoming like so many out there in their generation who are depressed, entitled, and not using their God-given gifts, a vision also for what they want. Most people watch other people live their dreams at the sacrifice of living their own. We aren't going to be most people, and sharing how I want to help them learn their gifts and use them. Tulpans are producers versus consumers. This was launched 6 years ago, and it's kind of incredible to see how it's played out in our family so far, how it's actually held me accountable to help my children do this, my wife as well. But, I could have just done the normal thing. We're going to limit your phone use, limit movies, monitor your social media use, and by the way, just go play outside. But you know what? That's not good enough. See, there's power in driving forward the right culture. When people adopt themselves into an idea, they grow in desiring what's different than the normal experience in the world. They grow to make their own upgraded decisions than the norm for their age. Words are so powerful, especially when you've been thoughtful about how you're going to use them with your family. Colossians 4:6 says, "Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person." So exercise the muscle of thoughtfully using your words. It's vital. Okay, so I taught you how to launch your culture drivers to your family. It won't work if you stop here. What I teach you next is where most people in business and with their families fail at this. Consistently communicate your 2 to 4 culture driving statements forward and never stop. That's the big tip. Most people stop, and here's some reasons why. You don't want to do this. You can't drive a culture forward unless attributes already exist within leadership. If you're addicted to your phone, how can you drive forward producers versus consumers? You can't and you won't. See, it also can feel like your words aren't making a difference. Do you have your children's hearts? It's a good question to ask. That's a first step. But also leadership is a long game. Driving culture forward takes consistent effort over a long period of time. It's the flywheel concept. A huge flywheel stores energy in a way causing massive mechanical momentum. But let's say the huge 10-foot tall flywheel isn't moving and it's your job through your own physical strength to push it so it builds momentum. So with all your strength, you push, and over time you get one rotation. You keep pushing, another rotation takes you a long time. If you let up, you lose that little momentum you had. You keep pushing over a long period of time, beyond what most people would do. And finally, over a long period of time, it's going. It has great momentum and it takes less effort. You're still doing it, but it's less effort. Which push got you there? See, this is an example from a business book I read in past. It's the same thing with creating indelible change for the better with your family. Consistent, never-ending influence. It wasn't one push. It was all the pushes together consistently over time. See, the normal dad life isn't good enough. It's not going to cut it to simply coach them in sports, a traditional education to teach them to provide, and go to church on Sundays. Look around you. You can't deny that I'm right. I think we all want our children to learn how to use their genius for the good of humanity, to follow after God and to grow in great character and to reject the world's lies spewed at them. The enemy's assault on families is full steam ahead. Us men can't be on the sidelines. We have to be in the trenches in a new and improved way than previous generations. You can't just compare yourself to the next guy and think, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Incremental improvement over what you are seeing done is inadequate. We have to think anew about this, right? You know what I mean if you listen to episode 2, The Art of Clear Thinking. Fresh, clear thinking is needed. Willing to actually implement things like what I've taught you, building a deep conviction that you have to dig in with real strategy and outstanding follow through. Make sure you have the hearts of your children and admiration of your wife. Make sure you are yielded to God's word. This is the fertile ground required for your family to receive your influence. Make sure you only launch a culture driving initiative that you yourselves are living out yourself. I know life is busy. There are challenges in just providing at times, especially during these times, right? But gents, you're so much more than provision. Your artful influence is required. We have to reject our inner passivity, shut out the enemy's lies, and believe that our words make a difference and use them well. So spend the time needed to really come through in crafting your culture plan in the previous episode, then launching it and never stop communicating about it. Of course, you will add things, you'll adjust things over time as the needs arise. But remember, your family has unique culture right now. Everyone's does. And if leadership isn't purposely influencing one forward, I guarantee you it's digressing over time into another normal outcome, launching unconfident Christian children entitled and unaware of their gifts with a growing appetite for what the world wants to win them over with. But you aren't normal. You are a resolute man willing to reject passivity so you can love others well, stand firm for truth, and lead unapologetically. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to give a 5-star review. And hey, could you share this with your church if you loved the episode?
You are a resolute man, and your influence is required during these unprecedented times. Revere God and fear nothing in this world so you can better lead your family, make a difference, and encourage others. Get your free Resolute Manifesto at resoluteman.com. The movement is growing as we reject passivity to love well, stand for truth, and lead unapologetically. Thanks for listening. And if you love this episode, please share it.